This is a do-it-yourself home decor studio. We offer in-person workshops as well as virtual workshops and DIY to go. It's just a place where anybody, any age, any gender can come and find something that suits them and actually be proud of what they've done. I didn't have a lot of exposure to women of color owning businesses where I grew up. I grew up in Germantown, section of Philadelphia, and so it was always important to me to own my own business. I just didn't know what type of business. So Jill, my mom, who is also the manager here, she and I went to a similar type of workshop like this. And as we were doing it, we were just like, this is so cool.
The best part about working with family is you get to see them all the time. In a pandemic, I hear all the tearful stories about people who can't see their children, and I am fortunate to see mine every day.
I do still have a full-time job. I work for Temple University Hospital in North Philly. I'm head of contract administration for supply chain. So imagine working in supply chain at a hospital during a pandemic. It's the most craziest, every day is different, which is great and rewarding. But then I have this store, which has its own set of rewards and challenges, but it's great because it's completely different than the day job. You know, this work doesn't feel like work. It's fun, it's rewarding. It's just a unity, you know, it brings people together. And I think that's what people want. They want some sort of, you know, feeling of, you know, being with somebody and connecting. I think is a good place to connect, a good way to connect.
When I see people gathering together for an experience, a concert, getting together and having a great conversation and including the arts in that, you know, crafting a really cool project or watching a play, I find it such a vote of optimism for people to want to be together and experience that thing together.
Music here is huge. Like, we have to have music. And I think having the orchestra here was something that, I mean, to me, it was like a once in a lifetime thing.
You know, in music, we, although it ends up being just sound, really, we use all kinds of terms that are visual as well. We talk about the colors in the tone. We talk about the textures of sound. And so it's really wrapped up in the visual, the performative. It's a way to interpret our inner lives and present it for others to see that perspective and to share the commonalities or mark the differences, but really to reach out and connect from soul to soul.
A lot of people don't get the opportunity to go to see the orchestra or go to an opera or go to the theater. So to see an ensemble come out and hear the beautiful sounds that come out of that, that's like a gift to some people that would never get a chance to go see them.
Today we're presenting two great stories set to music with a violin and cello duo. Charlotte Blake Alston is such an amazing artist. She's been a storyteller and an artistic guide, really, for the orchestra in so many different projects. And she brings to life characters with her voice, her gestures, just every part of her is telling you and sharing this story with you in such a great way. And she does this in these fairy tales that are really for children, although they have such universal themes of problem solving. This is the tale of Hansel and Gretel. Full disclosure, it was written by my talented husband, Tom Kraines. In this one, Hansel and Gretel have their own themes. Hansel is very clever and has all kinds of ideas to withstand his challenges. Gretel is sweet and has a beautiful violin tune with lots of slides in it that I like.
The tale of Hansel and Gretel. Hard by a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter. He worked day and night to put bread on the table. But times were difficult and food was scarce. The woodcutter's pride and joy were his two children. His bold, resourceful son Hansel and his sweet, compassionate daughter, Gretel. His wife, a jealous, shrewish woman who saw the love in the man's eyes when he gazed at his children and resolved to get rid of them. One night, as they lay in bed, she spoke. Listen, man, early tomorrow, take the 2 children, give them each a little piece of bread, lead them to the thickest part of the woods, and leave them there. For we can no longer feed them. The woodcutter was horrified and told his wife he could never abandon his children. Oh, you fool! Then all of us will starve. You may as well plane the planks for our coffins. And she gave him no peace until he agreed. The 2 children had not been able to sleep because of their hunger. And they heard their stepmother's words. Gretel cried bitter tears and said to Hansel, "It is over with us." "Shush, Gretel," said Hansel. "Don't worry. I know what to do." He waited until the adults were sleeping and slipped outside. The moon shone brightly on the white pebbles on the front of the house. Hansel filled his pockets with them. Then he snuck back inside and whispered, "Don't worry, Gretel. Sleep well." It was still dark outside when the woman came and woke them. "Get up, you lazy bones! We're going into the forest to fetch wood. Take 1 piece of bread each for your lunch. You'll not get any more." As they walked to the woods, Hansel kept turning back again and again toward the house. "Why do you keep looking back?" asked the woodcutter. "Keep up with us." "Oh, Father, I'm looking at my white cat sitting on the roof who wants to say goodbye to me." "You fool," said the woman, "that isn't your cat. It's the morning sun shining on our chimney." But Hansel kept turning back to the house, and every time he did so, he dropped a shiny pebble on the ground. Finally, they arrived in a clearing, and the wife told the children, "Wait here. We will come back for you when we're finished cutting trees." Hansel and Gretel sat and ate their bread, listening to the sound of the axe. After a while, their eyes grew weary and closed. As they slept, the sound of the axe continued. But the woodcutter and his wife had gone home long ago, leaving a branch tied to a dead tree that the wind blew back and forth. When they finally awoke, it was dark. Gretel began to weep, but Hansel said, "Wait a little until the moon comes up." After the full moon rose, Hansel took his little sister by the hand, and together they followed the pebbles that glistened like newly minted coins all the way back to their father's house. The stepmother barked, "You wicked children! Why did you stay in the woods so long?" But the woodcutter was overjoyed to see his children and promised never to leave them again. But not long afterwards, hard times again descended on the family, and again the children heard their stepmother's voice. "Husband, we have but half a loaf left in the house. We must get rid of the children. We'll take them deeper into the woods this time so they will never find their way back. You did it once. How is it any different this time?" Once again, Hansel waited until the adults were sleeping and slipped to the door. But the stepmother had locked the house, and Hansel could not get outside. Gretel wept bitter tears, but Hansel comforted her. "Go to sleep, little sister. God will protect us." Just before dawn, the stepmother cried, "Get up! Get up! We must go to the forest again to cut wood." Each child received a crust of bread, and they went out into the woods. On the way, Hansel crumbled the bread in his pocket, then stopped ever so often to throw crumbs on the ground. "Hansel, why are you always stopping to look around? Keep walking." "Oh, Father, I'm looking at my pigeon sitting on the roof who wants to say goodbye to me." "You fool," said the woman. "That's the morning sun shining on the chimney." Finally, they arrived deeper in the forest than they had ever been, while the woodcutter and his wife went into the forest to chop wood. Hansel and Gretel sat by the fire and shared Gretel's piece of bread, for Hansel's was all gone, scattered along the path. Their eyes grew weary, and they fell asleep. When they awoke, the night was dark. Gretel began to weep, but Hansel said, "Wait until the moon rises, my sister. Then we can follow the crumbs of bread back to our home." The full moon rose and shone in the clearing, but Hansel could see no crumbs. The birds in the woods had found them and packed them up. So the children set out walking. They walked through the entire night and the next day from morning until evening, but they did not find their way out of the woods. They were terribly hungry, for they had eaten only a few small berries that were growing on the ground. As night fell, they lay down under a tree to sleep. They had managed only to go deeper and deeper into the woods. If help did not come soon, they would perish. On the morning of the third day, they saw a beautiful snow-white bird sitting on a branch. It sang so prettily that they stopped to listen. The bird stretched its wings and flew before them. They followed it until it led to the roof of a little house. A house made entirely of gingerbread with a roof made of cake and windows of clear sugar. "Let's help ourselves to a good meal," cried Hansel. "I'll eat from the roof, and Gretel, you eat from the windows. That will be nice and sweet." Suddenly they stopped feasting. From inside the house, they heard a gentle voice. "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" The children sang back. "'Tis heaven's child, the tempest wild." The door creaked open. Out crept the oldest woman they had ever seen. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they dropped the cake and candy they were eating. The woman shook her head and spoke. "Children, who has brought you here? Come in. Come in." And the children took her hand and followed her into the house. After a delicious meal of pancakes with sugar, apples, nuts, and whipped cream, the children went to bed thinking they were in heaven. But the old woman had only pretended to be so kind. Early in the morning, she snuck into the children's bedroom to look at their plump red cheeks and muttered to herself, "That will be a dainty mouthful." Then she seized Hansel and shut him up into a cage. Next, she went to Gretel, shook her till she woke, and cried, "Get up, you lazy thing! Fetch some water and cook some food to fatten up your brother!" Gretel began to weep, but all in vain. She was forced to do what the wicked witch told her to do. Every morning, the witch crept to the little cage and croaked, "Hansel, stretch out your fingers so I may feel if you are fat enough." Hansel, however, stretched out a little bone to her, so the old woman thought he grew no fatter. This went on for weeks, until finally the witch could wait no longer. "Come, Gretel," she cried to the girl. "Fly around and bring water. Fat or not, I will cook him and eat him tomorrow." How wretched was the poor little sister when she had to fetch the water, and how her tears did flow down over her cheeks. "Dear God, do help us," she cried. "If the wild beasts in the forest had eaten us, we would have at least died together." "Keep your nose to yourself. All that won't help you at all." Early in the morning, Gretel had to go out and start the fire. "We will bake first. The dough is ready, and I've heated the oven. Creep in and see if it is hot enough." But Gretel saw what she had in mind and said, "I don't understand. How do I get in?" "Silly goose, through the door like this." And when the witch stuck her head in the oven door, Gretel gave her a push. Gretel ran as quick as lightning to Hansel's cage, unlocked the door, and sprung the gate open, crying, "Hansel, we are saved! The old witch is dead!" They ran into the house and saw in every corner chests full of pearls and jewels. "These are better than pebbles," said Hansel, and they both filled their pockets. As they left through the back door, Hansel noticed a path leading into the woods. "Perhaps this will guide us home again," he told Gretel, and they set off. And sure enough, after a very few hours, they saw their father's house through the trees. The woodcutter, whose wife had left him, was delighted to see his children. And as they emptied their pockets of the pearls and jewels, gold and precious stones, the three of them danced around the house in delight. All their cares were at an end, and they lived happily ever after. The end.
Right now we're doing a wood project, and I'm painting it. So we dab as opposed to swiping with paint. And we're doing this over a stencil. So we created this stencil for the Philadelphia Orchestra. We did a custom. And so we're dabbing because if we swiped, it would show the lines. So now we're just pulling this off. Ta-da! I was the first Black-owned AR workshop franchise, which was great. And that's important, to show my teenagers and, their friends and, that, you can own a business, you can, be a mom, you can, have a real job, you can do all of these things, and this is something else that you can do. It's not limiting. And, to me, that was really powerful. I just feel like it's our responsibility to, if you have a platform, to use it and to use it as much as you can without offending, the least amount of people as possible.
Well, just like today, for example, no one else in this entire community of AR workshop can say that the Philadelphia Orchestra had an ensemble play in their shop. So, again, a first for us. Win-win.
This is a wonderful piece, the tale of Bremen town musicians. And what's really fun about it is, first of all, we get to play on the violin and cello animal sounds. So I get to crow like a rooster, pitter-patter like a cat, and Priscilla has some donkey brays and an old hound who's always huffing along. So that's the first really great part about it. And it's also just beautiful music that represents so much optimism in this story, and the, teamwork and getting through it. It's just a really kind of can-do attitude piece that I really love.
Once upon a time, there was a donkey. As I was saying, once upon a time, there was a donkey who, for many long years, had carried the corn sacks back and forth to the mill without tiring. But at last, his strength was starting to leave him, and he was not going to be able to work much longer. He knew that his master would soon get rid of him. So, before that could happen, he ran away and took the road to Bremen. I may not be good for anything, he thought, but in the city, at least, I can be a musician. Maybe I can play the lute. After he had walked some distance, he met an old hound. He met an old hound lying by the road and gasping as if he had run a long way. Thank you. What are you out of breath for, old fellow? Asked the donkey. Ah, replied the hound, because I'm old and weak and cannot hunt anymore, my master wanted to kill me. So I ran away, but how can I earn enough to eat now? Listen, said the donkey, I'm going to Bremen and shall be a musician there. Come with me and you can be a musician too. I believe you'd make a fine drummer. The hound agreed, so the two walked on together. Before long, they came to a cat sitting on the... Wait, just... Before long, they came to a cat sitting on the path... Wait, just a minute. Before long, they came to a cat sitting on the path with a face as sad as 3 rainy days. That's better. Hello there, old Whiskers. Why the sad face? Asked the donkey. Who can be jolly when his life is in danger? Answered the cat. I'm getting old. My teeth are worn to stumps, and I'd rather sit by the fire and hunt mice. So my mistress wanted to drown me. So I ran away. But now I don't know what to do. Where am I to go? Well, we are going to be musicians in Bremen, and we will need music to play, said the donkey. Everyone knows that a cat can see in the dark, and everyone knows that composers work at night, so you can stay up all night and be our composer. The cat thought, that made sense. So the 3 now walked on together. After this, they came to a farm, and sitting on a gate, crowing at the top of his lungs was a rooster. "Oh, your crowing goes right through my bones," said the donkey. "Why all the commotion?"
"Fine guests are coming tomorrow, and the lady of the house wants the chef to make soup with me as the main ingredient," said the rooster. "So I'm crowing as loud as I can while I can."
The donkey said, "Come with us to Bremen. You have a fine voice. Being a singer there has to be better than being a bowl of chicken soup here." The rooster agreed. So now all four traveled on together. They could not reach Bremen in one day, so in the evening, when they came to a forest, they wondered where they might sleep. As they walked, they spied a light deep in the woods. They thought that if it were a house, it would be better to sleep there than sleep in the forest. They were also getting hungry and could use something to eat. So they made their way to the light, and sure enough, it was a house. They crept to the window and peeked in. Inside were open bags filled with treasure and fierce-looking men sitting around a table that was covered with wonderful things to eat and drink. "Oh, how I wish I were in there," said the donkey. "Food," said the hound.
"Drink," said the cat.
And the rooster said, "That's what we could use."
"That's what we could use."
I said,
"That's what we could use."
So they put their heads together to think how they might drive the robbers away, and at last they came up with a plan. The donkey would place his front feet on the windowsill, the hound would jump on his back, the cat would leap onto his back, and finally the rooster would fly up and perch on the cat's head. When they were ready, they began to make their music. The donkey brayed, "Oh," the hound barked, "Wow, the cat meowed," and the rooster go, "Wow, wow, wow." Then they burst through the window and into the room, scattering glass everywhere. At all those horrible noises, the robbers sprang up, thinking that the sounds of the dead were shrieking for them, and fled into the forest as fast as their legs could carry them. The four musicians now sat down at the table and feasted to their heart's content. When they had finished, they put out the light, and each sought out the perfect place to sleep. The donkey laid himself down on some straw in the yard. The hound stretched out by the back door. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. The cat curled up the hearth in front of the fireplace. And the rooster perched on the peak of the roof. And being very tired, they all soon fell asleep. But after a while, the robbers saw from afar that the light was no longer on in the house and that all seemed peaceful. The chief of the gang said, "Why do we let ourselves be scared silly? and ordered one of the robbers to go back to the house to look it over. He tiptoed up to the house and listened at the door. All was quiet. He went to light a candle, which woke the cat, who opened his eyes. Thinking that the cat's eyes were live coals in the fireplace, the robber struck a match to light them. The cat did not think that was at all funny and flew in his face, scratching with all of his might. The robber was dreadfully frightened and ran to the back door, but tripped on the hound, who sprang up and bit his leg. He then ran across the yard, surprising the donkey by the straw heap, who gave him a sharp kick with his big hind foot. The rooster, awakened from all the noise, roused himself and cried from the roost, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! Cock-a-doodle-doo!" So the robber stumbled and ran as fast as he could back to his chief. And said, there's a horrible witch in that house, and she spat on me and scratched my face with her long, sharp fingers. Then there's this man by the door with a knife, and he stabbed me in the leg. And in the yard is a huge monster who pummeled me with his wooden club, and all the while up on the roof sits the judge and cried out, "Throw the crook in jail! Throw the crook in jail!" I barely escaped with my life. And from that time on, the robbers never went near the house again. As for the four musicians, well, they found it so agreeable that they decided to stay. Happen by that part of the woods, you'll hear a house filled with music. They never did make it to Bremen.